Take a look at this quiet stretch of forest and small towns in southeast Missouri, about an hour south of St. Louis. For most of the last 300 years, the ground beneath this exact region has produced more lead than almost anywhere else on the planet. So much of it that at one point in the 20th century, 9 mines in a single narrow Missouri valley accounted for roughly 3/4 of all the lead mined in the entire United States. Since mining first began here in the early 1700s, this region has produced more than 17 million tons of lead, worth close to $5 billion, all pulled from a stretch of ground most Americans have never once had a reason to think about. And the deposit that made this possible almost got missed twice. Once when the original mines ran dry, and once when it took a small team of geologists using a brand new drilling method just to find where the rest of it was actually hiding. So how did one narrow strip of Missouri farmland become the single largest lead-producing region on the face of the earth? What's actually here? Southeast Missouri's lead district is split into 2 main zones. The first, known today as the Old Lead Belt, sits around the towns of Bonne Terre, Flat River, and Park Hills. The second, discovered decades later and still active today, is called the Viburnum Trend, a narrow band of ore stretching about 35 miles through the Ozark Hill Country. Together, these 2 zones have made Missouri the leading lead-producing state in the country for well over a century straight, with a single brief interruption in 1962 due to a labor strike. Even today, every ounce of lead mined in the United States on a large commercial scale comes from mines in the Viburnum Trend, all operated by a single company, meaning this one narrow strip of Missouri effectively is the entire domestic American lead mining industry, ancient seas and buried metal. The reason this specific region holds so much, lead comes down to geology that formed roughly 450 to 500 million years ago, during a period when a shallow tropical sea repeatedly covered much of what is now the central United States. Thick layers of limestone and dolomite built up on the floor of that ancient sea, riddled with tiny pores and cracks. Millions of years later, hot mineral-rich fluids, likely pushed through the crust by pressure from tectonic activity far away, moved slowly through those porous carbonate rocks. As those fluids cooled, they deposited a metallic mineral called galena, lead sulfide, into the cracks and pores of the rock, along with smaller amounts of zinc, copper, and silver. This type of deposit is known among geologists as a Mississippi Valley type deposit, named for the broader region across the central United States where this exact kind of ancient, fluid-driven mineral formation shows up again and again. And southeast Missouri happens to sit on one of the richest examples of it anywhere in the world. What makes these deposits so valuable to mine is precisely how they formed, not as a single dramatic vein, but as ore spread through the porous rock in a way that, once the right drilling and blasting techniques caught up, could be extracted efficiently across a wide area for generations at a time. The discovery that started 3 centuries of mining. French explorers and settlers first documented lead deposits in this part of Missouri as early as 1700, and continuous mining began shortly after in 1721, making it one of the oldest continuously worked mining regions in North America. For well over a century, mining stayed relatively small scale, following surface outcrops and shallow deposits. That changed in 1864, when a company called the St. Joseph Lead Company purchased land near the town of Bonne Terre, specifically to expand operations. In the 1870s, the company began using a then cutting-edge technique called diamond drilling, allowing geologists to core deep into the earth with far more precision than earlier methods. That drilling revealed something nobody had fully appreciated before: massive underground ore bodies extending far deeper and wider than the surface deposits miners had been scratching at for 150 years. The discovery triggered a genuine population boom. St. Francois County, the heart of the old lead belt, roughly quadrupled in population between 1870 and 1910 as mining and smelting jobs drew workers from across the region, transforming a scattering of small farming towns into a genuine industrial hub built almost entirely around what was coming up out of the ground, running dry, and the search for what came next. By the early to mid-1940s, decades of intense extraction had begun catching up with the old lead belt. Ore reserves were visibly depleting, and mining companies knew the original deposit wouldn't last much longer. In the early 1950s, exploration teams began searching for entirely new lead bodies elsewhere in the Ozarks, using updated geological surveys and drilling techniques refined over the previous decades. What they found, discovered through the 1950s and brought into production in the 1960s, became known as the Viburnum Trend, or simply the New Lead Belt, named after the small town of Viburnum sitting near its center. The last mine in the original Old Lead Belt finally closed in 1972, exactly as the Viburnum Trend was ramping up to replace it. And the Viburnum Trend didn't just replace the old deposit, it exceeded it dramatically. And by the 1990s, Missouri's combined lead production had made the state, and this narrow 35-mile strip of ground in particular, the single largest lead-producing region on the entire planet. The smelter that became a national health story. For decades, one of the most important pieces of this industry sat not in the mines themselves, but in the town of Herculaneum, Missouri, home to what became the largest active primary lead smelter in the entire United States. For generations, that smelter processed raw ore into refined metal. But smelting lead at that scale comes with serious environmental consequences, and by the 2000s, testing revealed that children living near the Herculaneum smelter had elevated blood lead levels, a discovery that triggered lawsuits, cleanup orders, and mounting public pressure. In 2013, facing the cost of new environmental regulations, the company operating the smelter shut it down entirely, ending over a century of lead smelting in the town. It remains one of the clearest examples of how an industry that built an entire region can eventually collide with the health of the people living inside it, where the industry stands today. Today, all 4 active lead mines in Missouri operate in the Viburnum Trend, run by a single company called Doe Run, employing around 1,200 people spread across more than 30 Missouri counties. Alongside raw mining, the region is also now home to one of the largest lead battery recycling facilities in the world, a fitting twist for an industry whose product, thanks to lead batteries being recycled at a rate of roughly 99%, quite literally comes back to the same region it was originally dug out of. The Viburnum Trend also continues to produce meaningful amounts of zinc, copper, and silver alongside its lead, and geologists have identified potential for cobalt extraction as well, a mineral now in high demand for batteries, meaning this 300-year-old mining region may still have a role to play in industries. Nobody involved in the original 1700s discovery could possibly have imagined. So this quiet corner of the Ozarks, first mined by French settlers 3 centuries ago, nearly exhausted itself once before a new drilling technique found what was left, went completely dry a second time before an entirely new deposit was discovered just a few miles away, and briefly became the center of a serious public health reckoning, before finally settling into the smaller, more tightly regulated industry it is today. The lead was never really the mystery here. What's remarkable is that this one narrow strip of Missouri ground has now been rewriting the story of American lead production for over 300 years, through population booms, wartime demand, environmental reckonings, and at least 2 moments when the entire industry could easily have packed up and left for good. And by the look of what's still buried beneath it, that story isn't entirely finished yet. If you want to see more of this, please like and subscribe.